Fairy Tales by Godfrey Bomans, published in 1949, the 23rd of April. The first story, The Little Chest. There once lived a student in Rome who believed in ghosts and fairies, but not at all. He was intelligent. Nonsense, he said. I've never met one, so they do not exist. Now, that was very extraordinarily reasoned, and we shall see also that he had it wrong. Now, the student lived in a very remarkable street that was called Pentecost Street. On the one side were houses very beautiful and stately, but on the other side they looked very dirty and fallen down. And there also lived most of the people. There lived also a little young lad who the whole day long lay in bed and coughed. He waved now and again near the student, but the student never waved back. He was always sitting to read. Only in the evenings he went to the window to smoke a pipe, and then he looked right down into the narrow, full rooms on the other side. He had also his thoughts about that. Mostly they were pretty thoughts, fine thoughts, but sometimes they were less pleasant. Then he put on a new pipe and blew it away in the blue smoke. Once in the evening the student came late home and found a long black box, small box, on the table with a white cross on the cover. Remarkable, said the student. He opened the little box and found a letter, a note, and this is what stood in it to read. Best student, tonight at 12:30 I will come to visit you. You don't need to be afraid. How do you like this little box? Hartelijk groete, a good thought. A good thought, repeated the student. Strange. He called the landlord who lived beneath him above and asked, Say, landlord, has there been somebody in my room? No one, meneer, said the landlord. Do you know somebody who is called a good thought? No, I don't know that, meneer, said the landlord. And I've also never met one, and that was also true. How came this little box on the table? Asked the student. The landlord took the box in his hands and looked at it from within and without. Then he read the note. I will put the locks on the windows below, meneer, he said, and the front door on the night lock. I'm glad I'm not in your shoes. The student laughed. Go back down below, best man. It is all nonsense and rubbish. He put on his pajamas and went to read in a learned book. When it was 12 o'clock, he stood up and pushed the window up. There was nobody to see on the street. The moon shone against the house on the other side, and there stood thousands of stars in the sky. A beautiful night, murmured the student. But how few there are. How is it that how few there are who know of it? How comes it that I see it? Am I better than others? No. But I have the time for it. The others have to slave and work the whole day, and the evenings they are too tired to look and to glance on high to God's wide heaven. The world is upside down. Then it struck 12:30. It was a heavy bell that rang over the roofs, but the student didn't notice it and continued to think. Everyone makes plans to improve the world, but the world is not getting better. It would be well then if I had all the money that I don't need and that I'm not using, and give it to the family on the other side. Maybe that pale little fellow would be better. And if my neighbour on this side should do it with a house on his opposite side, and then the whole street through, then will the Pentecost street be happy. And if every street over the whole world should do such a thing, maybe the whole world would be better. People have to begin at some little platform. Let it be this place here. Very good, said a voice behind him in the room. The student swung around and saw someone sitting in his stool. In his chair, the visitor was completely transparent, but otherwise dressed as an ordinary man, an elderly man. His hair was grey, but his face was youthful, without a wrinkle. He had a small round hood on. Hola, who are you? Asked the student. I am a thought, said the little man, and well, a reasonably good one. There are also other kinds, but there have been enough of them here. Were you here long? Asked the student. A few minutes. I sat just now in your head, and now I'm sitting here. Did I call you? Asked the student angrily. How do you come to be here? I come and I go, said the little man. There's nothing to do about it. Well, then I would rather go, said the student. This is a private residence where I want to be alone and in quiet. In such rooms I come gladly, said the little man. I usually stay just a quarter of an hour. We don't stay very long, never. You live here very comfortably. Except the view is a bit, how shall I say? Listen here, said the student. I mustn't hear any of that. And in ghosts and fairies I don't believe. You still must believe in me, said the visitor, because I'm sitting here, and that you cannot doubt. I doubt anyway, replied the student. It is all nonsense and gossip. I want to be alone and left in peace. What proof must I give of my presence? Asked the man, setting his hood on his knees and looking carefully in the roundness of it. There is standing a chest there behind you, continued the student, which has been annoying me years. I can't really throw it away because it belonged to an old aunt of mine who imagined that I was fond of it. Could you change that into something else? It has already happened, said the visitor, without looking up. The student looked at the chest. Now something remarkable happened. The chest didn't change. It remained the same as before, but the student began suddenly to love it. He understood that the engravings and the work in the old panels were there from the touching of 1,000 human hands. He saw his Aunt Anna standing before him. As she had looked younger with a flowery house dress on, and her hair And through her he could see how the towels counted in the left drawer lying. And he stood also as a young man, looking at the flame in the wood that had the form of a jumping dog with its head up high. It lasted only a moment, then it was gone. There is really nothing changed, said the student, doubting. It is the same chest. The little man shook his head and smiled. You yourself was a moment different. That is the secret. Must I go now or stay? Go, said the student. You're disturbing my rest. I want to be alone and live as before. I have it good and I want it to stay that way. These old memories bother me, and what the thought concerns that I just had before the window, it was a mirage. Go away, please. But the little man was already gone. The student dressed out and stepped into bed. And after that, the next morning he had gotten up, he went to a friend and told him what had happened. Extraordinary, Dan. Write it down. Everyone has to read that. And the student wrote it down, and it came on paper under the eyes of men, and men said that he a great learned person was. And then he wrote still more, and it became a whole book. And in it stood that everyone must look after themselves, and that is just the way the world was. The people on this side of the street were very proud of him. They came to his room to thank him for his book. It had to be said for once, and now it has been said. And on a day came that the student was finished his studies and gave a feast. The light from the crystal chandeliers fell on the windows on the house on the other side of the street, and threw over the windows of it a golden glow. Still, the windows were closed, and the curtains were closed, drawn. And in front of the door stood a wagon with a small black chest. There was a white cross painted on it, and a woman stood there beside it, laid her head on its cover, and wept. What are you looking at? Asked his friends. Is there something wrong? But the student turned away and was silent.